To make a pinch pot, the only thing that you really need is a chunk of clay and a little container with water. So to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this chunk of clay into a sphere. I'm going to do that by patting on the clay firmly with a rounded hand. If I pat on it with the flat of my hand, I'm going to end up flattening the clay, which I don't want to do. I want to turn it into a sphere. So I'm going to just keep patting the clay as I rotate it. If I get any folds in it, I'm just going to smooth those with my finger and kind of squish it into the shape that I want. You should end up with a ball of clay roughly the size of a baseball to a softball, somewhere in there. That's going to make a nice size pinch pot or bowl. What I'm doing now is just smoothing any wrinkles out. I want to make sure that this is as lump-free as possible and wrinkle-free. Once I've formed the sphere, I'm going to cradle it in one hand, and I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to insert this into the pinch pot to start making the opening of my pinch pot. So this will be the top of my pinch pot, and this part here will be the bottom. I want to maintain this nice round shape on the bottom, so I'm cupping my hand and holding that in and cupping it. Here goes. I push my thumb in until I can kind of feel it back here. Like I know that that hand is there. I can sense it with my thumb. So I know that now I'm in, right? I've got my opening. It's very narrow. My walls are very thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the pinching action in order to widen this hole. Okay? So what I'm going to do is put that thumb back in all the way down, and I'm going to start pinching this section, this bottom third section, and opening it up on the inside by pushing my thumb against these fingers and rotating. And I don't want to leave really big finger impressions on the clay because I'm just going to have to smooth those out later. So the key really is to go slowly, gently, and to try to make even walls. So now what I've got is it's open all inside here. Like I can wiggle my finger around in here. I've made like a little cave, but the mouth is still narrow and my walls are still really thick. So if I want this to turn into a bowl that eventually looks like this piece here, I'm going to have to widen it, right? I'm going to have to widen these walls so that they aren't so thick. And what I may find happening, and I'm already finding this even though this is really fresh clay, is that it's starting to crack. So I'm getting these cracks. So that's why I have my water here. I'm just going to dip my finger in the water. And how does dog hair get on everything? And I'm just going to smooth those cracks away and then keep pinching. You want to smooth those cracks as soon as you see them, because if you wait until the cracks are really big, then you have to do a major repair. All right, so what's it looking like now? It's looking kind of like a bell shape, right? It's looking kind of like a bell shape. And this hand's getting tired. So I'm going to add a little more water on the edges here, and I'm going to switch. I'm going to start doing my pinching with this hand. And I'm going to start kind of expanding out this bell shape a little bit. Pinch and rotate, pinch and rotate. And this hand is stronger. Even though I'm left-handed, my right hand is stronger. And pinch and rotate, pinch and rotate. Now let's take a second and check in on this. How does it feel in your hands? Does it feel bottom heavy like mine does? Does that mean that you have extra clay down here? One way to check is to do the thumb and forefinger test, where you go down to the bottom of the bowl and run your fingers along it. And if part of it feels thicker and part of it feels thinner, that means you need to pinch on where that clay is thick and move it around so that it becomes thinner. So if you look at this example bowl, you can see the walls are thin and they are even, right? So that's what I'm heading towards, is thin, even walls and symmetry. So that's why we keep it rotating in our hands, because otherwise we might end up just concentrating on one side and getting one side really just perfect, but then the other side isn't. So then you've got an asymmetrical bowl, which is not what we want to create this time, although that might be useful and might be fun for a different design. But for your first pinch pot, I want you to concentrate on symmetry and evenness. So you can see also sometimes I slide side to side. That helps get rid of some of those finger marks that I'm leaving behind when I go side to side. And it also stretches the mouth of the bowl out, because I keep imagining this with like maybe cereal or ice cream. Like this is going to be a bigger bowl than this one because I took more clay. So the size of the bowl depends on how much clay you have started with. And if you're getting tired, or let's say you have to stop for some reason, you want to get your board out. This is a really good reason why we gave you boards. You want to get your board out and just place it down like this. So place it with the mouth, I'll call this the mouth. Place this with the mouth side down. The reason why you want to do this is because you want to preserve this beautiful rounded bottom shape. What we're going to do in the next video is we're going to add a foot. But for this first video, all we're doing is just creating this beautiful dome shape. And while you take your break, you're going to want to cover this up. You don't want it to dry out. So make sure that you just slip a plastic bag over it while you take your break. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep working on this. So I'm going to keep kind of pressing on any lumps that I find. And making a pinch pot takes a while, and it takes patience. So take a deep breath and kind of settle into this work of smoothing it, of making it the right thickness, of making sure that it has a pretty rim. You want that rim to be even. The rim is one of the first things that we see on a bowl, and if your rim is uneven, then it's going to really call attention to itself and it's not going to look very pretty. So work on the rim, all we're really working on right now is the inside of the bowl too. We're not going to worry too much about what the outside looks like yet. So by smoothing it like this, I'm kind of imitating the potter's wheel. So I'm using this circular motion and rotating it like a slow motion version of the potter's wheel. Okay, my clay now is about 1/4 inch thick, and I do have a ruler here. It might be a bit thinner than that. Let me see how thick my wall is. It's about 1/4 inch thick. It's maybe a little less than that. You don't want to go any thinner than that because then it'll become too weak. Right now it's pretty wobbly. It feels pretty good in my hands though, and I like the shape. It's kind of a dome shape, which I like. This is going to be very nice for cereal or something like that. So I'm going to flip it upside down, and now I'm going to pay attention to how the outside looks, because the inside looks pretty smooth. I could spend a little more time on that, and I will later. But for right now, it looks pretty good. The rim looks pretty good. It's not too thin. Everything's looking pretty good. So I'm going to flip it over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something called paddling. And for paddling, you can use a wooden spoon, or in this case, I'm just going to use a ruler. And what you're going to do is you're going to rotate and tap lightly on your form. And it's going to just, what you want to do is you want to look at the outline shape of your dome. And you want it to be symmetrical and really pretty. So as you rotate it, you'll start to notice that pieces are kind of sticking up, so you want to pat those down. And it also kind of smooths the surface a little bit. But you don't want to pat so hard that you leave lines behind, especially if you're using a ruler, because you're just going to have to smooth all those out. But paddling is really great, especially if it's a little bit uneven. You can kind of pat it back into shape. People in studios tend not to use rulers, they tend to use like a wooden spoon looking thing called a paddle. But I feel like that just did the trick. It didn't get rid of all of my lumps and bumps, but it made them less noticeable. So depending on how perceptive you are, and it may be something that you need to work on, is perceiving where the lumps and bumps are. Depending on how perceptive you are and how much you want this to be smoothed out, you could spend an hour working on a pinch pot just smoothing it. And you might not even be happy then. So remember to add a little water if you see any cracking. Don't add so much water though that your clay starts to collapse. But correct those cracks as they form, because those cracks will just get bigger. They'll just get worse, and we don't want any cracks. Okay. So now I have a pretty nice dome. I like the way it looks. It's fairly symmetrical. I mean, it's a little off, but again, it's handmade. And I'm going to call that good for this part of our video. So if you get to this point, you've completed the pinch pot bowl and you're ready to add the foot.